There are moments when love feels less like a choice and more like a quiet haunting, something that lingers in the edges of thought, slips into dreams, and rearranges the light around ordinary days. You might not even realize when it began. Perhaps it was in a passing glance, a silence shared at the wrong moment, or the way your name sounded when he said it, not loud, not deliberate, but as if spoken by instinct. Love doesn't always enter with clarity. Sometimes it arrives disguised as confusion. And yet beneath that confusion, something ancient moves a pulse, a recognition, a whisper from the soul saying, "Here, this one matters." Carl Jung once said that what we do not make conscious will appear in our lives as fate, and perhaps nowhere is that truer than in love. Because love, when real, does not begin with the mind's permission. It begins in the hidden world, beneath thought, in the slow gathering of meaning we cannot name. It reveals itself not through declarations, but through small, almost invisible gestures. The shift in a man's tone when he speaks to you, the unspoken protectiveness in the way he stands closer when the world feels too loud, the glance that lasts a heartbeat longer than it should. The soul, Jung believed, is always speaking not in words but in symbols. And in love, those symbols are everywhere. When a man is falling, even before he admits it to himself, his inner world begins to change. His attention starts to orbit differently. He notices things he never did before, how you tuck your hair behind your ear when you're nervous, how your laughter lifts the air around you, how your silence has weight, as if it holds the weather of your heart. He may not say anything, but you can feel his awareness circling you like light through mist. It's not the kind of attention born from desire or habit. It's something quieter, the recognition of a soul in resonance. And yet love rarely follows logic. It's not a clean equation of attraction and response. Often it manifests as contradiction. The same man who seems distant, detached, even cold, is the one who, without realizing it, has already begun to orbit around your existence. His mind resists what his heart already knows. He pulls back, then draws near again. He speaks with detachment, but listens too intently. His presence flickers between courage and fear. And that's because love, when it touches the unconscious, dismantles control. It unravels certainty. It reveals. There's a point when this becomes visible to anyone who dares to look closely. His actions may not say "I love you," but his energy does. He'll remember things you forgot you mentioned. He'll check in at odd hours, not to impress you, but because something restless inside him needs to know you're okay. It's not obligation, it's instinct, a silent vow he doesn't even know he's made. Jung believed that our emotions often speak before our minds can interpret them. In this way, love becomes an unconscious language, one that bypasses logic and speaks through care, through the smallest, most human acts. You see it when he brings up your name in unexpected places, when he notices the tremor in your voice before anyone else does, when he offers warmth without needing to be asked. These aren't coincidences. They are confessions made by the soul. He might not yet be able to name what he feels, but his world is already rearranging itself around you. Thought by thought, gesture by gesture. Not because he's trying to win you, but because something within him has recognized you as part of his own unfolding story. It's as if the universe itself is quietly conspiring to reveal what he's still too afraid to see, that somewhere in the depths of him, love has already begun to bloom. It often begins with subtle displacement. A man who once moved easily through his world now finds himself a little off balance, as if gravity itself has shifted. His laughter sounds the same to others, but within him, something trembles. He becomes quieter without knowing why. His focus, once sharp, begins to scatter around a single point. It's not that he intends to lose control. It's that love, real love, begins where control ends. Jung would say that the unconscious has found an image, a mirror, something sacred through which it can speak. And that mirror is you. In your presence, his defenses soften. He may seem less certain, even awkward. The man who once carried himself with easy confidence now pauses before speaking, measures his words as if each one must first pass through the rawness of what he feels. Around you, he isn't trying to impress, he's trying to understand. Because when the soul is stirred, it becomes clumsy with its own depth. True emotion humbles us. It takes apart our practiced ease and replaces it with something more honest, more human. You might notice how his silences change. They are no longer cold or distant, but heavy with presence. He doesn't rush to fill them, because in that quiet, something sacred is happening. It's the meeting of two inner worlds, tentative but real. The space between you becomes alive, a wordless language of breath and glance and heartbeat. He may not say it aloud, but that silence is his confession. It says, "You move me, you disarm me, you are becoming part of me." Jung wrote that the soul loves what it protects, and when a man's soul begins to love, he starts to care for you in ways that defy logic. He notices if you're tired, if you've eaten, if your day has left you frayed. He worries in quiet ways, not out of control, but from a deep emotional resonance that ties your well-being to his own. His gestures might seem simple, a small favor, an unexpected message, an offer to walk you home. Yet behind them lies something profound, a devotion that has taken root without permission. And it is devotion, not dependency. He doesn't want to own you. He wants to make sure the world doesn't bruise what he's come to cherish. This is not a man acting from ego. This is a man being guided by something older, something wiser than the rational mind. It is instinct shaped by tenderness, care born from the unconscious realization that your presence steadies him. Still, you may find yourself doubting, because outwardly, nothing grand seems to be happening. There are no dramatic declarations, no sweeping gestures, only small consistencies, quiet care, the way he listens when you speak about your fears, the way his eyes soften when you smile. Love of this kind moves like water through stone, slow, persistent, shaping the unseen, until one day you realize how deep it's carved itself into the landscape of your life. And yet he may still fight it. He might distance himself, retreat into thought, convince himself that what he feels is just curiosity or confusion. But the unconscious doesn't yield to denial. It continues to whisper. It rearranges his routines, finds him thinking of you when he should be focused elsewhere. It makes him pause before sleeping, remembering the tone of your voice, the way you looked at him, the quiet peace he felt simply being near you. This isn't obsession, it's awakening. Something in him is beginning to recognize what his conscious mind has not yet named, that his soul has already chosen. And though he may not understand it, every step he takes now toward you or away from you is part of that same unfolding. Because once the soul begins to love, it cannot go back to sleep. There comes a moment when the change within him is no longer subtle. It seeps into the way he moves through the world, though he might not yet realize it. His friends may tease him for being distracted, quieter than usual, lost in thought. His work begins to feel slightly off-kilter. Even his familiar routines, the morning coffee, the drive home, the comfortable silence of his own company, no longer feel the same. Somewhere your presence has settled into the rhythm of his life, invisible yet undeniable. Jung wrote that the soul recognizes before the mind understands, and so a man in love begins to transform from the inside out. He starts to think differently, feel differently, see differently. The world softens around its edges. What once seemed ordinary now holds a shimmer of possibility. His unconscious, that deep interior ocean, begins to speak more loudly. You appear in his dreams not as fantasy, but as symbol. Sometimes he wakes remembering only fragments, the sound of your laughter, the outline of your face, a feeling of peace that lingers like a scent. These are not just dreams, they are messages. The psyche uses images when words fail, and love is one of its oldest languages. In waking life, he begins to act on impulses he can't explain. He might find himself walking past places that remind him of you, pausing before a song that carries your tone, or picking up his phone without knowing why. It's as if his heart has become a compass that quietly tilts toward you. He doesn't plan it. He just feels drawn. And though he may not speak of it, you live now in the in-between spaces, in the half-thoughts, the pauses, the daydreams. This transformation isn't always graceful. In fact, it often comes with resistance. The conscious mind, shaped by habit and fear, tries to pull back. He tells himself it's nothing, that he's imagining it, that love like this isn't practical. But even as he argues with himself, his emotions betray him. He feels protective of you, not because he should, but because something in him aches when you're hurt. He feels your joy as if it were his own, your sadness like a shadow cast across his chest. It's not dependency, it's resonance. Your presence has entered the same inner space where his most authentic self resides. You've become, without trying, a symbol of what Jung called the anima, the archetype of soul connection that awakens a man's depth, tenderness, and vulnerability. It's not about romance in the usual sense. It's about recognition. Through you, he begins to meet the unspoken parts of himself, the gentleness he once hid, the longing he buried, the quiet hope that life can still surprise him. And when that recognition deepens, something even more mysterious occurs. He starts to change even when you're not there. His decisions shift, his values reorient. He begins to notice beauty again, the kind of beauty that humbles rather than excites. It's as if your energy lingers in him, teaching him how to see. Without your presence, you still shape him. Without your words, you still speak through his choices. He might not tell you any of this. He might act the same, laugh the same, move through his days as if nothing has changed. But within him, everything has. The soul once touched cannot pretend. It begins to reorder the world around what it loves. And though he may try to resist it, every part of him now bends toward that hidden truth, that something in you has awakened something in him. And no matter how he tries to explain it, nothing else feels quite real anymore. At some point, the conflict between what he feels and what he allows himself to show reaches a quiet breaking point. It doesn't announce itself in a grand revelation or confession. It happens in silence, the kind that comes when a man realizes that his world has already changed, that the person he's been trying to understand is no longer outside of him, but within. You've become part of his inner dialogue, the invisible thread running through his days. His choices, his thoughts, even his moments of solitude all seem to carry your echo. He starts to imagine the future not as a distant landscape he walks toward alone, but as something that subtly includes you. He doesn't plan it. It happens naturally, like breathing. He'll mention places he wants to visit and catch himself imagining you there. He'll think about decisions, and without intending to wonder what you'd think of them. You become a presence in his internal council, that quiet space where real decisions are made. He begins to weigh life through the lens of your existence, not to please you, but because his soul has already decided that your well-being and his are intertwined, and that Jung would say is one of the clearest signs that love has crossed from conscious desire into the realm of destiny. The ego loves to control, to name, to plan. But the soul doesn't need control. It moves in symbols and feelings, in those invisible shifts that guide us long before we're ready to understand them. You are not just a person in his story. Now you are part of the force that is shaping him, softening him, leading him toward something greater than he ever allowed himself to feel. You'll sense this change not in what he says, but in the texture of his presence. He will start to show up differently. Even his stillness feels warmer. His words slower, more careful, as though each one must pass through the truth he feels for you before it leaves his mouth. When you're near, his body relaxes in ways it doesn't around others. When you're away, his energy feels unanchored, restless. And when you return, there's a peace that settles into him so naturally it almost feels sacred. That peace is love in its purest form, not the restless fire of infatuation, but the steady light of recognition. You are no longer something to pursue or figure out. You are home. Not the kind of home built from walls and plans, but from acceptance, safety, belonging. In your presence, he no longer needs to perform to impress, to wear masks. He can simply be. And that is what love does when it's real. It returns us to ourselves. He may never tell you all this in words. Few men can. But you'll know. You'll see it in the way his attention finds you, even in crowded rooms, and how his voice softens when he speaks your name, and how he instinctively takes your side when you're not there to defend yourself. You'll feel it in the small pauses, the unspoken moments, the tenderness that asks for nothing in return. Those are the soul's fingerprints. And though he might not fully understand what's happening, the truth is simple. He is already transformed. Love has done what logic could not. It has rearranged the architecture of his heart, redefined his idea of strength, and shown him that vulnerability is not weakness, but awakening. He no longer sees love as something to control. He feels it as something that reveals. In time, the resistance fades. What began as confusion becomes acceptance, not loud, not sudden, but quiet as dawn. The man who once stood uncertain between fear and desire now carries a softer certainty, the kind born from surrender. He no longer asks himself whether he loves you. The question itself dissolves because love is no longer an idea. It has become the air he breathes, the undercurrent of his being. It exists in his gestures, in his patience, in the ease of his laughter when you are near. And though he might not say the words, you can feel it, that rare and unguarded peace that comes when the soul finally stops pretending it's separate. Jung believed that the unconscious, once made visible, transforms fate into freedom. And so it is with love. Once a man becomes aware of what his heart has already chosen, he begins to live differently. He becomes more gentle not only with you, but with the world. The sharp edges of ambition soften. The noise of comparison fades. He stops needing to be right and starts needing to be real. Because loving you has made him conscious of something timeless, the truth that connection, not control, is the soul's deepest longing. You'll notice how his care takes on a new quality, not performative, not reactive, but grounded. He no longer seeks to impress or win. He simply seeks to be present, to make space for you in his life without demanding anything in return. And in that quiet presence, there is safety, a sanctuary built not from promises, but from constancy. Love becomes less about possession and more about devotion, less about excitement and more about peace. He no longer fears losing you because he understands that what's real cannot be lost. The bond lives beyond circumstance. When he looks at you now, it's different. There's gratitude in it, not for what you do, but for who you are, for how your existence has changed the architecture of his soul. You have become, in Jung's language, the mirror through which he meets his own depths. Through you, he has met the child he once was, the man he's becoming, and the eternal self that both transcends and holds them. You have not merely entered his life, you have awakened it. And this is where love becomes something more than emotion. It becomes awareness. He begins to realize that love is not just what he feels for you, but what he becomes through you. It expands beyond you into the way he treats others, into the gentleness he shows strangers, into the compassion he extends to himself. Because that's what true connection does. It teaches the soul to see the divine in everything it touches. In your presence, he has discovered that love is not about finding completion in another person, but about remembering wholeness through them. It's not the ending of loneliness, but the awakening of empathy. It's not an escape from pain, but the courage to face it with open eyes. Real love, the kind Jung spoke of, isn't a fairy tale. It's a mirror that reveals both your beauty and your shadows and teaches you to hold them both with grace. So if you see these signs, if you feel that quiet care, that patient attention, that unspoken presence, don't doubt it. Don't rush it. You are witnessing something rare, the unfolding of the unconscious into love. A man learning through you how to speak the language of his own soul. And perhaps that's the deeper purpose of love, not to bind two people together, but to awaken them both to the truth that they were never separate to begin with. If this reflection touched you, take a moment to share it. Someone out there may need to hear that what they feel isn't madness, but the quiet work of the soul, remembering how to love. Like, share, and subscribe if you wish to journey deeper into these stories of emotion and awakening, and tell me in the comments if you've ever seen yourself in this mirror of love. Because in the end, the only thing the soul ever truly asks is to be seen and to love without fear, what it recognizes as its own.